Hello, BSP fans. This is Zoe Church, and you're listening to episode 15 of the Black Swamp podcast.
This is Eva Church. BSP headquarters remains shut down, so this is the second episode produced from the Black Swamp home studio, aka our basement.
This is Nicole. Tim's handling all production responsibilities again, as Jamel and Nathan are out hunting for hand sanitizer or building couch forts or something. Either way, they hope to be back to work together when it's safe and appropriate.
As a reminder, we've canceled the 2020 Percussion Ensemble Showcase and replaced it with a snare drum solo competition for both U.S. high school and college percussionists.
Entry deadline is April 30th, and full details can be found on our website.
I totally forgot last time, so I'll make sure to throw the link in our show notes. Again, we thought this would be a great opportunity to keep students motivated and practicing during their mandatory time off. Dan Smithger, Josh Jones, Julie Licata, and Jim Campbell are judging with almost 20 entries already received. So this next conversation is with Doug Perkins, and it was actually recorded several months ago, right before PASIC 2019 in November, actually. Since that time, Doug has assumed teaching responsibilities at the University of Michigan. We don't touch on that, but we certainly unpack the last 20 years or so of his musical career. It's always a pleasure talking to Doug. He's fun, super down to earth, and has a ton of knowledge to share. So here we go. Hey, Doug.
Hi, Tim. How's it going?
Good. How are you? I appreciate you calling in and having a chat with me. Really, the main reason I want to have a conversation is so you can air all your grievances and dish as much as you want about Todd Meehan. So you have 45 minutes to an hour. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Nice.
No, I'm just kidding. I had a chance to talk to Doug many months ago. So it's cool
I'm loving
that you
this
and I
you
get
just
to connect.
you just called him Doug, so that already makes me happy.
Oh gosh,
Which you're not the first, nor the last.
Well, it's because I like you better. So everyone
Thank
is
you.
Doug to
That's
me.
right. That's
really.
right.
No, I talked to Todd.
Yes.
Several months ago. So yeah, it'll be nice to get your side of the story on everything we spoke about. But no, I'm just joking. I don't really care. Really, the main reason I want to call is to get your story as a percussionist. Like, obviously, how you got started and kind of the path that you've taken to get to where you are now. Some things that you have going on, anything you might be starting in the future. So let's start at the very beginning. Where are you from, Doug?
I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and even more technically, McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, which is just like in Pittsburgh, there's the three rivers. So the Allegheny, Monongahela make the Ohio. And then if you go down the Ohio River, like 3 miles, there's a place called McKees Rocks, and that's where I'm from. Which is too much information. But yeah.
No, there's never too much information.
That's great.
And you got interested in percussion. How did you have a musical family? You were forced to join band in 5th grade, or kind of how did that spark?
Yeah. So my family my immediate family is not musical. My dad is. I describe my dad as a tone-deaf football fan. He literally, to this date, I've heard him match a pitch, I think, once in his 81 years of life.
Yeah,
but
it was by accident, maybe.
I think it was, actually. But he, I think, distant in the family, there might be a concert pianist on the Perkins side, but then on the Fife side, I have an uncle who was a professional bagpiper for a while. So there's random music in my family. But I started in 5th grade as a saxophone player. And my memory of it is that I was so bad that my mom, after a year, asked me to quit the saxophone. Like, I remember practicing in my room, and she kind of came in and was like, sat next to me on the bed and asked if there's any other instruments I might want to play.
She had to have a real heart-to-heart about the saxophone.
Yeah, she was just tired of hearing it. She was just like, this squeaking is not working out. I don't want to pay for this saxophone rental anymore.
Okay.
So that bailed. And then, I played the drums in school, but I got into it, but kind of on the rock side a little bit first. And then even had kind of a funny moment where there's a percussionist who some people who play Black Swamp percussionists would know, this guy, Brett Dietz, who's in Louisiana now.
Yep.
He went to my high school, but Brett was 4 years older than me. So if I wanted to play in jazz band, but since Brett clearly was going to keep the drum chair, I had to learn how to play the bass. So I learned how to play bass and guitar for a while. But then as I got interested,
happy to hear that.
Who would be happy to hear that?
Jamel, he's a bass player. Jamel
nice. He's one of the great. Him, Joe Gramley, also in the Black Swamp family, shares a love of the bass.
Yeah. Cool.
But then kind of then randomly, so when I was at school, our school had sort of this like fine arts program for gifted people in school, and I auditioned into that. And then one random day, this percussionist who plays in the ballet and opera and plays all over Pittsburgh, this guy Jack Deaney, came to our school to do a master class. And since it was there was like snowing, so I was the only person that showed up. And so I got this like 3-hour. I actually got a 3-hour tambourine lesson from him.
Wow.
It was super intense. And then at the end of it, he kind of just looked at me and he said, "You're my student now. Go tell your parents that you study with me now."
Yeah, that's amazing. And we know Jack from Volkline's music.
Oh, from Volkline's. Yeah, of course you know him. You know him well through the Volkline side of it. Yeah. But yeah, Jack just kind of declared me his student. Yeah. So then I guess
how long did you study with him?
All the way through high school. Like from 7th or 8th grade all the way through. And but yeah, funny. He just kind of declared himself my teacher. And and then I went to his house, took lessons. It was very intense and really great. But he kind of, got me really interested in orchestral things. And he's an amazing timpanist, so got me into timpani and he's just great at a lot of things. Got me like my fundamentals, like playing accessories and cymbals and how to play bass drum right in a Sousa march and how to play snare drum well. He got me kind of going down the classical path, I think, pretty seriously.
Yeah, that's great. I saw somewhere I'd seen that you did have a connection to him or kind of cited him as an influence, and I was very curious how that kind of came about. So, yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Jack's a great guy. I mean, he's a big supporter of ours through Volkvines for a long time. I know he's still with the company. So yeah, it's cool to hear.
Yeah, he's the president now, and actually he bought me my first Black Swamp item, or gave it to me, probably.
Oh, really?
He gave me a tambourine when I graduated, as a belated high school graduation gift. So
it's awesome. You still have it, I'm sure.
Yeah, somewhere back there, unless Todd Meehan put a hole in it or something.
Okay, now we're getting started. Now we're getting to the dirt. No, I'm just...
yeah. But so anyhow, Jack was a big influence on that side. But I also played in punk bands with Brett for many years as well. In high school. Before.
Okay, so you were playing bass with Brett then in
for sure.
Punk bands, rock bands.
Yeah. That was definitely a thing that happened for a while.
You still play bass guitar? Or could you?
Spiritually, I answer yes. I don't know if I can actually play very well, but I still identify as a
you got the
player.
job done, I guess.
Yeah.
And you still connect with Brett at all?
It's funny. We had off and on, but just randomly in the last couple of weeks, we've been emailing. As we all have friends from high school, it's like we'll go years without speaking.
Yeah.
But actually this week we have spoken. So.
All right. Yeah. Do you see him at PASIC ever? Does he? I don't know if he attends or not. Or
I would assume so. I have. So we'll have to see. I'll look for him on the floor in a couple of weeks.
Right. Cool. So you're playing percussion in high school, studying with Jack Deaney, and then I do know you got your undergrad at Cincinnati. So, because was Jack kind of influential there? Was he making suggestions, or did you kind of search that out on your own?
That's a good question. I think I searched that one out on my own. He knew my teacher, Jim Cully, and I know that when I kind of came to the idea, he was really supportive and was a fan of Jim from hanging out with him at PASIC, I think.
Sure.
And it's funny with Jack. Well, I think he was super supportive. He pushed me very hard, but I also remember like the day I told him I wanted to go into music, he just started laughing. But I think like he just lived through getting Brett through school and some other students. So I remember him laughing a lot, but then also being very supportive. And it's funny, I went to school in the pre-internet era.
Right. So did I.
So I was looking at a number of schools, but even since Cincinnati had a really good picture in percussive notes one time.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I can remember being like 14 and seeing a picture of this room full of crazy drums and gongs and stuff. And I knew I wanted to see that room.
Yeah.
And then I had family in Dayton. My godfather was he was one of a vice president of development or something for Dayton, and he'd arranged a tour for me. Like one time we went to Dayton, and then we went to Cincinnati for the day, and I got to meet the guys, and I got to see all the cool drums there. And then kind of once I was there, the city felt enough like Pittsburgh that I felt comfortable being there. Sure. Just being away from home there. But then also like there was this room full of mystery and excitement, and I wanted to be there.
Yeah. So you were sort of gravitated towards it. No, I think that's a good point that Cincinnati felt like Pittsburgh, because I think that's pretty important. Many of the people I've been talking to is that kind of does come into play when they're choosing an undergrad degree, like where it is, obviously who you're studying with and how nice the picture looks in percussive notes, but does it, they're moving away from home. You moved away. So are you going to be comfortable there and feel like you kind of fit in? So sounds like obviously you did.
Yeah, it was just a little further down the Ohio River. So
yeah. So mainly studying with Jim there, or did you?
Yeah, Jim was my guy. I worked in percussion ensemble with everybody and took some lessons with Rusty and with Al, but Jim.
Right.
You sort of have a primary person, and that felt right. So I spent all 4 years with him.
Did the picture then live up to its hype?
I think so. Although it's funny when I think about my time at Cincinnati. Look, now with 21 years of hindsight, having been away from there, I got so much from Cincinnati. But it was so funny when I was there because I was, after coming out of my Jack Deaney training and really this kind of, an like an old school, like we're going to play, play bass drum and cymbals really well and do orchestral things. Then to go study with this percussion trio, like that played weird music all the time. I thought what my teachers did was really weird, and seeing them go on their percussion group tours seemed like, I was super not into it. I was like, why do they do this? This seems dumb. Like, I remember being aggressively confused by their careers. But
confused. That's good.
But so it's so funny to then, like the second I got away from there, started playing percussion chamber music all the time and made a whole life in it. So kind of just really funny the way where some of the Cincinnati-ness and being like, oh, these guys are weirdos, to then being like, no, they're really cool, and I'm gonna make a life that looks similar to that.
Yeah, I didn't really think of it at first, but I mean, yeah, totally going from Jack, more traditional, like orchestral playing, kind of basics and fundamentals, to avant-garde, like new music, like stuff that's like, it's a real dichotomy. That would be a huge shift. But obviously you kind of fell into the groove there.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. Like the training was also similar. Like, I think I studied with them because I knew
Right.
they were like, I knew Jim and Al were like Mike Rosen students, and that seemed cool. And Rusty and Jim both studied with John Beck up at Eastman. So like, I knew the pedigree of kind of where they were coming from seemed like what I was looking for. So
Right.
it just happened that in addition to learning, all of the stuff that they knew in a more traditional sense, that I learned a lot about,
Right.
like just seeing my teachers play John Cage music circuses or drumming or, meeting John Luther Adams in the hallway when I'm a sophomore. Those were just things that
Wow.
happened.
Right. Well, we'll get to him in a little bit.
Yeah.
So then Yale for master's work. Like,
Yeah.
how did that happen?
It's kind of interesting. I think I was the first person that Bob actually accepted through an audition at Yale, because it was fun. Yesterday was in Rotterdam, hanging out at where he used to teach. He was at the Rotterdam Conservatory, and then had come to America and brought sort of the first class of those people like Eduardo Leandro.
Wait.
and Nathan Davis.
Wait. Hold up. Yesterday you were in Rotterdam?
I was in Rotterdam.
Yeah. Where are you today then?
I'm in Chicago today.
Oh, okay.
I've been in Europe for a while, but I'm back.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was going to ask you about that, but I thought maybe you were still over there, and I was impressed that you picked up the phone to talk. So okay, sorry. So
No.
Bob.
Anyhow, so I was Bob's first, part of the first class of people that he was accepting. And it's funny to say now. I mean, I probably wouldn't have got into Yale now, me then, because I was just somebody who I felt deficient in mallet playing. So I literally just wanted to expand that. And at the time, Freer was coming around a few times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed really nice because of my interest in orchestral things. So it felt like a place that was somewhat kindred in the new music side, like Cincinnati, but that there would be a strong. Then I would have access to strong orchestral things, which was true. I mean, Yale was really great. Like just being at Yale is amazing.
Right.
As a person with low SAT scores from McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, getting to go to school at Yale for a couple of years was really the access to so many smart minds and so many great things was really mind blowing. And then with working, obviously the kind of music education getting from Bob through his, obviously the mallet stuff and percussion ensemble stuff, but also the world forgets that he was a timpanist for a long time and is a Cloyd Duff student. So that strong timpani training is a huge part of what I got there. And then even with Tom, and then having some chance to work with Freer and just have him beat me up a little bit about orchestral stuff. Enough actually, it was actually really kind of wonderful. We worked for the better part of we kind of worked for sort of the first year, and then the So guys came, and Tom and I had to sort of, he and I had a lovely dinner one night where he explained that I needed to focus with my life, and then I gently let him go, or I gently let the orchestral thing go. But the things he gave me in that year, I still talk about every week with my students, and kind of the way he clarified my brain around, playing, preparing for auditions and that kind of thing was invaluable.
So there was a point then where you kind of had to decide if you were going to pursue orchestral or more contemporary percussion, and that was I don't know. I only bring it up. Tom made it easy, and that Tom cared enough to have the conversation with me. But I think he's a believer, not incorrectly. Just the one time we had a conversation where he's like,
you play this stuff well, but you also play this other stuff. And my students in Cleveland just do the orchestra stuff all day. So when you stop practicing your excerpts and go play, John Cage, my guys are still playing their excerpts. So they're going to beat you, but you sound really good. Although it was fine. I think similarly, actually going back to Jack, I think I've always enjoyed being a generalist. I think he always was trying to get me to think specifically. But I'm a messy person that likes to play lots of things. So I guess at the time I made a choice, but it was less like making a choice and more that just like my friends and I were playing a lot of music together, and that seemed really fun.
Right.
So,
sure.
It was more the kind of choice of like, why you play with the kids on one side of your block for a while, and then later in the year you're playing with the kids on the other side of the block. It was less like I have to make a big life choice. It was just kind of organically.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Organically, it's more of a transition. So when you say playing with your friends at Yale, was that the start of So Percussion then?
Yeah. That was when we just kind of all met in school. Me and Tim Feeney, and Todd and Jason Truding were kind of playing in percussion ensemble, and then it seemed to be going really well. Working through some repertoire, and I always like to talk about how that felt like being back in rock bands, kind of like how it felt in high school playing with my friends. We were the dorkiest rock band in the world.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people would be love to be in a dorky rock band right now. Either side.
No,
so,
and it was great. It was really great, but it had that vibe of just like hanging with my friends. We just happened to be playing.
Yeah.
Percussion repertoire.
Right. So how did it go for all the listeners out there? I mean, you were, I guess, a founding member of So Percussion. How did it go from what I would assume would be like a graduate student ensemble to more of a professional kind of performing group? Or
I guess slowly, very slowly.
Yeah.
But I always talk about just how nice it was that I think while we were in school, we really enjoyed playing with each other, and we felt, it's weird to use the word safe. Like we just felt like when we were in the room working, like we knew that life felt good, and we felt like, I think we felt okay about the state of things. And I say that like thinking about for young performers or, 22-year-old, 23-year-old, 24-year-old percussionists who are about to leave school and thinking, oh my God, I have nothing to do. Right. That can be a soul-sucking and terrifying feeling. But for us, we had each other. So even though, we played in school and then we knew we wanted to keep playing out of school, but even though we all had like desk jobs, I worked at the Hartford Symphony in the education department, it was really nice to have rehearsal every day with my friends, and we had gigs to book and we had work to do. So it was kind of like getting out of school, even though we weren't making a ton of money, having our own studio and having gigs to play and meetings to attend sort of gave our musical life focus. It took a few years. We were really lucky to, in school, have had access to people like, we got to play for Steve Rice for the first time in school. And then Tim Feeney paid for the So-Called Laws of Nature, which is this big quartet by David Lang that was written for us.
Right.
And it's sort of like through those two composers and those projects and their mentorship is sort of the things that kind of got us our first press and our first big tours and people that actually pay money for us to play places. But it really worked, as I said, like from playing from being in school to playing art galleries in town to maybe playing an art gallery in the next town to somebody's actually going to pay us in New York City. To, I guess the first person that paid us any real money was Tom Burrett. Had us come to University of Texas for a week. And I remember when we got that gig, we were like, we thought we'd really made it.
Yeah.
And I think that was from like beating up all of the PAS chapter presidents for Days of Percussion gigs. He used to be the chapter president of Arkansas, I believe. But then was like, well, I'm not there, but I am going to Texas. Maybe you could come to Texas with me. And so that was a nice early friendship for us.
Yeah, cool. So then like a couple years after you got your master's, and you guys are playing, so percussion is kind of growing, and then you move on to like a doctorate degree. Is this all around the same time, or no?
Sure. It's messy. I got my doctorate in. There was a moment.
A lot of things.
There was a moment when So Percussion was just Jason and I, because
oh, really?
Feeney had quit first, and then Todd was sort of his wife, I think, and he were thinking about getting back to Texas. So it was kind of clear that like he had eyes on getting back to Texas. So
okay.
So there was like a split second where we were replacing people, but also kind of thinking about like maybe this is a short-term thing. So Jason moved to New York, and I started going to school at Eastman. But then we hired Adam, and then this guy Lawson White, and things started really picking up. And so I was sort of in college. I did 2 years at Eastman, but simultaneously like commuting to New Haven and New York City every weekend. And finally, John Beck actually was the one who encouraged me to drop out of school, which I thought was really nice of him. One day I just came in and he was like, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I don't know, Mr. Beck. I think I need a degree." And he's kind of gave me the speech of like, everybody wants to play concerts, but most people don't get to play concerts. And you seem to have lots of concerts to play, so maybe you should just go do that right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I left school that hour, actually. I like went downstairs and withdrew.
Wow.
But then,
Holy cow.
and then some years later, when I finally quit, I called Eduardo Leandro, who was a buddy of mine from Yale, who was teaching at Stony Brook, and asked if maybe Stony Brook would take all my credits and I could finish my doctorate there. And they did. So then I was able to pretty quickly, I had basically done all my coursework and just went and played some recitals and was able to finish up my doctorate at Stony Brook after I left. So
wow. And so what year was that then? I'm just trying to get the kind of
I feel like it was like
2000,
2007, 2006, 2007. Okay. That's when that all went down.
Sure. So Todd had moved back to Texas, and then how did you guys stay in contact or decide that the two of you wanted to maintain like a not only friendship but like a performance friendship. Relationship, I guess? Yeah, musical friendship.
That was just, we'd been in touch. The friendship didn't suffer when he left. So we had stayed really close and stayed in touch. And then I remember just walking around one day on one of the first days that I was kind of out of the group and I had nothing to do. So I remember walking, I was in New York City at Gramercy Park, is this little park, sort of just north of the village. And I think we were just kind of talking and like, well, I don't have anything to do. Well, I don't have anything to do. Well, we should play. Well, we should play again. We could play again. Would you want to? And then just kind of like, it was as quick and just it was a very quick conversation.
Yeah.
And then we just started playing together, which was really, it was really great and just kind of like,
yeah.
But an easy and an organic decision.
Yeah.
And remains so nice. Like we just played in Lithuania last week, 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And, just when you realize as we all get older, Tim, that I've known Todd for going on 25 years now and have played intense music with him for just about as long. Just right. so nice to have a friend like that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so everything everything you're saying is lining up with Todd's account. Just so to put your mind at ease. No, yeah. I mean, I think that was kind of a big part of even his take on it. Is like you had sort of a musical bond, and it was kind of a seamless transition. And even though he was in Texas and you were on the other side of the country, like you were still able to keep this connection. And then when you got together, it was like, no time or musical space had passed, which I always find about that duo. And maybe it was common then, but it's definitely more common now, where people play together, but they live states apart. Like, and I always found that interesting about you guys is that you could kind of have your own thing and then come together and play a concert, rehearse for a week or a day or whatever. So was that a challenge at the beginning?
Yeah, I think for us, or for me, the biggest challenge is just that we learn music more slowly than, when you're like somebody like who's just rehearsing all the time, or even thinking about other duos like how like Gene, like the Quay duo, they're Black Swampers, aren't they? Gene and Tim Brocious. Yeah. Are they on the family? They're not on the family. All right. Well, never mind.
They're not. Not currently.
Well, okay.
We'll edit that out in post.
Yeah. Well, it's some fun because they live in the same town, so they're able to like work on stuff all the time.
Sure.
For us, we just have to be cool with the fact that it takes us time. But once we know things, having known each other for years and years and years, but then also that we played in, like with our training that we rehearsed for hours and hours a day, every day for years, for like 4 years or something, that we just have this, there's like just a technique that is buried into us. So it's not like I'm meeting somebody for the first time and trying to work out a vocabulary for how to make music. Like I know exactly what Todd's tendencies are and what he's going to want to do in a phrase. So, yeah, so that's all like super duper comfortable, but it just, the only difference is we can only learn so much music in a given year.
Right.
But that's also kind of lovely, I think, for us, the way the group has sort of grown. It has seen us have kids. It has seen us go through career shifts and location shifts. And like, so sometimes we're really active, sometimes we've been less active, but kind of, because it's this like, unlike where every day you go in and you're trying to, since it's not a full-time job, it is more of a loving act to play music with Todd. But there's but then there's no reason for us to not play music together. Like we love and respect each other. So sometimes we do more or less, but it's just like this really kind of wonderful constant in our lives. And funny,
that's
like
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and to see how it's transformed from like, as younger players, can we make a body of repertoire? Can we make it be meaningful to like, going back to our show in Lithuania 2 weeks ago, he brought his whole family, and to be halfway around the world and like staying up all night eating dinner with his kids who are now old enough to sit through our concerts and have fun conversation over a late dinner. It's like, it's, what a gift to get to share these life things with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what our conversation was with him before. It was like how special it is to be able to get together with like, your best friend and do this. And you're right, you don't necessarily have to, but why not? Like you're able to, so that's what makes it special.
Yeah, it's really pretty great. I feel bad that he has to do it with me.
Yeah, he mentioned that too. Yeah, actually. Yeah. So yeah, all the truths are coming out now. Finally. So what we don't need to. another thing I wanted to get at was you kind of touched on a lot of your travels, and you have been and taught several different places, like a lot on the East Coast. Is Chicago. I don't know if you're still based in Chicago, because now you're, it's not a surprise, you're teaching at U of M, University of Michigan. So, we don't have to kind of trace through all of that, but do you still kind of spend time on the East Coast, or are you based in Chicago now, or how does that kind of work?
It's messy. My life's messy, but it's fun.
That seems to be a trend, but
yeah,
that's cool.
So I had lived for the last bunch of years. Well, in the SO times, I was living in New York City, which was cool, and then I was teaching at Dartmouth and moved up to Concord, New Hampshire, which was lovely, but smaller town life. And
sure.
At some point, I think we felt like we wanted to be back in a city, and then in a very wonderful way. There was a period of time.
So when you say we, were you married? When you say
I was
we, were
married.
you?
Yes, we. That's my
married?
wife. My wife is the we, and my son
Right.
at that time. We were thinking about options, and kind of very generously, through some conversations with Matthew Duvall from 8th Blackbird, he sort of set it up so that I could be in residence at University of Chicago with the Blackbirds, and then I was able to tour with them for a couple of years. So that felt like enough of an impetus to move us to Chicago. It was really funny. He and I were driving down Lakeshore Drive, and he's like, "You should move here." And I said, "I need a job. I can't just tell my wife I want to do it for just fun." He's like, "Well, I don't want to do this University of Chicago, so just do that. That's a start. You do that now." And then and that was enough that my wife was like, "Okay, we'll do it." So
what does your wife do then?
She's a doctor, so she does family medicine and sometimes delivers babies, and she's also on the residency faculty of University of Chicago.
Oh, okay. Right.
And
sorry to back up a second. How do you know Duvall then, Matthew?
Oh, Matthew and the Birds from Cincinnati. Actually, they came.
Oh, okay.
They were my last year at Cincinnati. They were in school at the same time. So, more reasons that my new music community was flourishing in my undergrad, because it's like so much of my life comes out of meeting them and people like them in Cincinnati, and then meeting the So Boys and the Bang in a Can people at Yale, and my friends in Signal, and so many other people at Eastman. It's just, these your time in schools does often set you up for where you're going in your life.
Musical connections.
Yeah. So I live in Chicago still, but at some point, when Keith Aleo went to Interlochen, I was asked to start teaching at Boston Conservatory. So I did and do teach at Boston Conservatory, and I fly out there from here every week or two. And then, as you say, this year is particularly nutty because Michigan asked me to teach there this year. So I was in Holland yesterday, Chicago today, Ann Arbor tomorrow.
Jeez. Yeah, man. But it kind of seems like that's, like you said, your life's been messy, which isn't a bad thing, because
it's really
constantly
wonderful.
Have a lot. Yeah, it sounds like it. You wouldn't do it if it wasn't, obviously. So congratulations. I don't know. I think it takes a special person to kind of do that, but then you're making it happen. So I think it's cool.
Yeah, and I think in some of our emails you were asking me about what sort of what motivates you to do things.
Yeah.
And I think some of it is just general gratitude of how great is it that I get to do what I do. But then also, I remember, and going back to Jim Cully, my teacher, I remember once he talked to me about how once he was a dad, he'd kind of life once he was a dad, he always talked about being a dad that you turn into a second-class citizen, and how your like primary thing is to raise a child and to make your family work and to make that good. And so for me, that was, I think, very true. And that once I was raising my kid, like the idea of failing at a concert or like musical failure worried a lot less to me.
Sure.
But then that was super liberating. Also, being married to a doctor who, for her, like sometimes people die when she is at the office. Like she has patients that die.
Right.
And she has to carry that feeling with her. You know, even if she does her best, you can't, and did all the right things, you can't help but wonder if there's something you could have done different to change that person's life or keep, you know. I have none of those concerns.
Right. Yeah.
I just go hit stuff. And then, like, you know, if it goes well or not, I can still put on Facebook what a great show it was and everyone will believe it. And the song will rise the next day. And it's kind of fine. So, like,
well, just to move back for a second. Sorry. I mean, I think that totally puts it in perspective. Like, my wife works for Gordon Food Service, which is a food industry provider, and they, you know, whatever. And she used to work with a lady there that, you know, when they would get stressed out about something or they would have deadlines or this, she'd be like, "Relax, everybody. You know, we're not saving lives. We're selling fries here." Like, it kind of reminds me of, you know, the same thing. Like you know, what you're doing is important, but it's cool to have some perspective in that sense. But sorry, sidetrack. Side note.
That's great. So I think for me, like, also, so when I have to get on a plane or I have to drive to Ann Arbor tomorrow, like, I just get to talk to, like, for teaching, I get to talk to, like, some of the most talented kids playing our instruments.
Sure.
And so it's like, I'll get up early to go do that. And that's great. And similar, and then if I want to, like, play crazy music or, you know, like, go do a concert in a lake, or I was touring just the last 3 weeks. I was touring as a conductor in Europe, conducting this violin project. Because no one's going to die, so I'm just having a great time taking chances and making things more messy. And doing well because no one's going to die. And also with the violinists, if somebody would have said, "You don't know as much about the violin as you should," I would have said, "You're right. I'm a percussionist. You got me."
Yeah. Right. Is this something you do talk to your students about, like perspective, or not, kind of not being scared to be messy?
I think I try to. I think that is, I want them to all at once. I think, you know, or because of that, like, we're all lucky enough. I've said this a lot. I think I've said it recently in Michigan a bunch of, like, we're lucky enough that we get to be in these great facilities making music all day. So we should really do it well. We should work really hard. And then we should treat every decision in our solo repertoire or with our technique. It should all be life or death. We should really work it hard. But then I do talk about that in the way of, like, but let's not get overly nervous or freak out, because, like, you're hitting a snare drum. So if we can work through like,
hopefully,
you know,
hopefully the best manufactured snare drum. Never mind.
Yeah,
Keep
but
going.
at the end of life, but, like, key G is, like, not that hard. It's kind of a silly little bunch of 8th notes and 16th notes. So, like, let's, you know, like, work really hard, but, like, don't, like, you know, need to, like, freak out or lose weight and stop eating over it, because, like, it's just like, and if you can have fun and work really hard, but just, like, sort of keep all of that heady life or death in a bad way stress thing out of it, you know, maybe you'll be more successful than other people.
Sure. So going back in time, you mentioned John Luther Adams and getting to meet him in Cincinnati. And I don't know if listeners know or don't know, but you have been heavily involved in multiple performances of Inexuit. However, how do you pronounce that correctly? Inexuit?
I go Inexuit, but
Okay.
But whatever.
And so can whatever.
I don't know how to say Todd's
can
last
you-
name. Is it Meehan? Is it Meehan? I don't know. I'm literally not sure.
I say I. Well, your last name's Perkins, so that's just like
That's
the
easier.
restaurant. So that's how I remember. That's how I remember that. How did you get involved in kind of organizing those performances and kind of that?
So that's a funny story. When I
hope it's messy.
it's messy, or it's not what you'd expect, I don't think.
Okay.
In that, so after I quit, I'd moved to New Hampshire and was teaching at Dartmouth. When I was teaching at Dartmouth, my friend Rob Essler, who's a great percussionist in Phoenix right now, he was at San Diego doing his doctorate and was researching how a piece might sound different in different acoustic spaces. And was doing that through this piece, Strange and Sacred Noise of John's, this big quartet that's like an evening length, bombastic thing, which is when I met him. It was premiered with Cincinnati back in the day, and I was at the premiere of that piece. It was it was a DNA altering day, the day I heard that premiere.
Sure.
But Rob had done the piece in a hall at UCSD. They did it in the desert out in California. But then Rob wanted to do it in New Hampshire in his, I think the way to say it is, Rob wanted to come to New Hampshire to play Strange and Sacred Noise in his mom's boyfriend's backyard, which is near Dartmouth. So
Okay.
I helped kind of arrange for Rob and his wife Lisa and Steve Schick to come out and play it with me, and John came up, and we rehearsed at Dartmouth and then played this concert in Rob's mom's boyfriend's backyard. And then,
Yeah, it's messy. It's messy.
and it was really great. It's just like you never know what you're going to say yes to that's going to change your life. But like I went to this guy's backyard and some people flew in and we played. James Tenney had died that week, so we also played Having Never Written a Note for Percussion back there. And then we did what percussionists do, which is to go eat pizza and drink beer after this concert.
Sure.
In this Rob's mom's boyfriend's backyard. So we drank beer and then we talked trash about playing. We were like, man, we should go to Alaska and do this again, man. John, you should have us up to Alaska. And then he was like, oh, I could arrange that, no problem. And then we kind of just, nobody backed down. So a year later, we ended up in the tundra in
Right.
Alaska. This time it was,
'Cause
it
you were-
was those four plus Morris Poulter also joined us on that.
Oh, okay.
And we rehearsed at Fairbanks where Morris was, and then we loaded up the gear, drove it till the road ended. We were near Denali in the Alaska Range, and then we're met by ATVs, and we ATV'd gear further out until the ATV thing ended, and then we walked the gear even further, and then we played
Jeez.
Strange and Sacred Noise for 2 days for the moose of Alaska. And I think we kind of thought we were just going to go camping and it'd rain and we'd never play. But we played, and then John's neighbor, this guy Len, came and actually videotaped it, and we set up recording equipment by running Pro Tools off of car batteries. And we did it on the solstice when the sun never set. So there's like these cool videos of us playing in the middle of the night. But whatever. And that was also a big moment for me because I just quit and was kind of not sure if I wanted to do this weird music anymore. But when I had the realization of like, oh, I just flew to the edge of the world to play snare drums for Moose to hear what it might sound like. Like it was kind of it was a really nice rebirth of like, no, I do love this stuff. This is what I need to be doing.
Right.
But so anyhow, we went out there. Strange and Sacred Noise sounds kind of lame on the side of a mountain. Sounds awesome in a concert hall, but the sound floats away. And then John, I think, kind of got the idea to write his outdoor piece, which Steve premiered at Banff. And then Omar Carmenates? Is that how you say it? Furman? His last
I don't
name.
know. Crementes?
Shit. Okay, we can cut that part out if you cut anything out.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyhow,
we'll edit that in post. Don't worry.
It was also played at the piece was also played at Furman. but right after we got back, I started getting random phone calls from people in New York who were like, "I heard you did this Tundra thing," and then that's what somebody asked me then to do this big concert of Xenakis in Central Park Lake, where we built stages in the lake, and it got kind of a lot of attention. And then also through my relationship with Todd and Tom Burrett, we thought about doing a Nuxuit at the Round Top Festival in Texas, because I had the idea that if you wanted to get 99 percussionists anywhere, like Texas is probably the place, since drummers grow in trees in Texas. So we were able to easily get 100 players. And so that was the first time it was ever done with the full 99 players. And once we'd proved concept, and then also after I had kind of done this thing in Central Park with Xenakis, that then I was asked to do it at the Park Avenue Armory in New York City for a big show, and then that got a lot of attention. And then we did it in Harlem at Morningside Park. So then I quickly got a few high-profile performances of the piece, and then kind of from there it sort of took off in a way that I didn't expect, and people like then the last however many years have been getting to go all over the world doing that. And then John also wrote another piece called Sila for kind of mixed instrumentation that we did at Lincoln Center 2 years after that, I guess. So it is kind of, again, in a surprising and messy way, playing a concert in my friend's mom's boyfriend's backyard has sort of altered my whole career, to where actually, because also this, like, having just toured and conducted for 3 weeks in Europe, comes from this crazy project that was commissioned and then premiered at the Red Bull Festival last year. Just because I get called to do weird big projects that are super fun. And again, it's like I play in this guy's backyard. I'm not afraid to like have things go badly, so I say yes to these crazy projects, and I keep having fun, and it keeps working out. Which is really
so I know
it's kind of a fun, messy thing.
You have a reputation. So you were conducting then too. I know you mentioned that previously, but did you have previous experience conducting, or again you just weren't afraid to screw it up?
Similarly, a messy track of, I think, or maybe it is a Steve Schickism, but I heard Ayun say it the summer of, what do you call somebody holding two sticks, a drummer, and then that same person holding one stick as a conductor. So I think, so I conducted, I've conducted percussion ensembles and stuff. And then there was when I lived in New Hampshire, there was a music festival there that started asking me to conduct. So I had it feels like every year or two, a couple people call me to conduct something, and I say yes. Mm-hmm. So, so I've conducted at some different festivals, or conducted my friends' records, or I've conducted the new music ensemble at Boko. So I'm getting there. I don't feel like a total idiot anymore. And also from playing years of in so much as that, as a percussionist, we can give good cues and we have good ictuses. And then if you're in chamber, so much of chamber music is being a conductor, but you're just conducting in different ways. So I feel okay, and I'm getting better at it. I don't feel like a complete idiot. But it's still hilarious every time. Like on this tour, people didn't think when people are just like, "Oh, you're the conductor. Tell me about the things you conduct, because you're a conductor, and let's talk about conducting." And I'm like, it's more complicated than that.
It's messy.
Yeah, so it's hilarious. But it's so great. You only have to carry your music, and there's probably somebody there that wants to help you set up your music, and you definitely get a better dressing room. So
you could probably get a page turner if you.
Yeah, it could get. It's really good. So we can talk about when Black Swamp wants to start making batons.
Hey, it's come up before.
For me and Colin.
So
and Pedro, you've got some conductors on the roster.
Pedro, Pedro is. He's like been conducting for a long time. That's impressive. Okay, so we've covered your like vast career so far in the music percussion industry, and obviously you're crazy busy. You like it that way. How is there anything inside or even outside the music or percussion realm that keeps you kind of inspired? I know we talked a little bit about motivation, but in that sense too, what kind of keeps you inspired or motivated to kind of keep moving forward with all these projects?
I think just like curiosity. I think being able to remain curious, to wonder what could be possible, or to sort of push myself sort of to the next, out of my comfort zone, I think is what sort of keeps me motivated.
Right.
So that, and like also, I think in a professional side, that's definitely something. So always getting new pieces or new collaborations, or conducting violinists, for example, are motivating. Right. But then also like, working with students is also just the energy of young people is pretty great.
Right.
I'm so lucky right now to be teaching at two great schools where I walk through the door and there are people whose brains are on fire.
Yeah.
And so just to get to sit back and sort of engage and hopefully motivate and keep people fired up and moving forward is, I get a ton of energy from that. And also when I want to be lazy and think about how well my students play things or how quickly they're learning things, and I think it's so that in that way, even just as a percussionist, like, my snare drum warm up is probably the best it's been now, just because working with students who are super motivated, or as my students have problems and we have to develop their technique, then it helps me develop my technique. And so the feedback loop percussively through my students is really super motivating, I think.
Yeah, and you're not the first person on this podcast that I've talked to that has said the exact same thing. I mean, I think, as an educator, students can naturally be motivating, and you sort of can learn something from each other. So yeah, a lot of the educators that I've been talking to, that's a definite source of inspiration for them. And seeing sometimes like a light bulb go off can be motivating for the educator as well. So when the things kind of click for the student, it's a source of energy, an inspiration for the educator also.
If not just another light bulb, there's like two pieces that I've been working on recently that I watch my students learn, and there have been times when I was like, "Oh, this is, I know what they did. Great, I'm gonna do what my student did there. That's gonna work really well."
Yeah. Hey, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Another common thread going way back from in our conversation. You are also not the first person I've talked to that started off playing saxophone, which I think is super interesting. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but
who else?
Yeah,
do you remember who else played saxophone?
Andrea Venet. I think Adam Hopper, who I spoke to. I think there was a couple other people too, like saxophones. And when I even think back, how when I started, like I wanted to play saxophone too. Like I don't know why. My sister was in marching band, and she's 5 years older, so I would go, to marching band contests or whatever, symphonic band, and watch. And I was like, oh, saxophone seems pretty cool. So I don't know. I never ended up playing, but it was an attraction. So I haven't figured that little gem out yet. So I'll get.
I don't think this is why, but I will confess that the first real concert my mom ever took me to, was Kenny G. We sat in the orchestra pit for a Kenny G show when I was in like 5th grade, I think, or 4th grade.
That's can fine. Edit that part out too if you want.
I'll admit it. I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
That was a real thing that happened in my life.
Yeah, I applaud you for speaking it out loud. Would you say that it is a guilty pleasure then? Do you still listen to Kenny G at home
No,
alone with headphones on?
No, I will listen to not a lot, but you could still probably. I'd still admit to enjoying Enya maybe, but Kenny G has moved on. But get the lights just right in my studio and throw on some Enya, and I'll settle into a peaceful place. And also of guilty pleasures, one of my favorite moments on tour in the last 5 years was one day I was in Greece doing a Nuxuit and met my Greek counterpart for a coffee, and then I walked him into rehearsal. And when I walked through the door of his rehearsal, we were on stage of Yanni at the Acropolis, and my head about exploded. I've actually stood on that stage.
Yeah.
My grandma used to watch that, and she would always hope that I would get to play with Yanni. And so on her deathbed, I think I lied and was like, I'll play with him someday, Grandma. But I was on that stage.
Yeah, no, I forget the drummer's name, Yanni's drummer, but I always thought he was great. And I do remember seeing, live at the Acropolis and watching that. And it's impressive, like the whole production. Yeah.
And it's funny, it's just that's a place in Greece that like people just do concerts.
Yeah,
but
sure.
For me, I kind of freaked out a little bit.
Yeah. What else do you listen to? Like if we were to turn on your iPod, if you still have an iPod or your iPhone, what might be playing?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to let's see what I've listened to lately. You'd probably catch me listening to, like my standard go-tos are not so like new or crazy in that I'm probably still listening to a lot of Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell. Like as my, like if I'm walking down the road or I'll throw on a Wilco record or something. I'm trying to think if I listen to anyone cool lately.
Wilco's pretty cool.
I mean, Wilco is the greatest. Just like anything Glenn does, I can't help but get really happy listening to him play anything. And then I haven't been doing it much lately, but my dirty pleasure is the Indigo Girls. That there's more Indigo Girls than you'd expect in my iPod. Glenn made me listen to this. There's this new Angelique Kidjo record where she does talking head stuff. It's pretty dope.
Sure. Angelique Kidjo, and Indigo Girls, I've seen them both in like smaller venues. And Angelique Kidjo, I mean, I haven't listened to her in a long time. I have some of her, like, I don't know if it's one of her first albums, because she's West African, right? I believe, and has a lot of, obviously, influence. And my wife and I saw her in a small theater here in Grand Rapids. And it was honestly one of the best concerts I've ever been to. Just like the energy. The drummer was amazing. She had like a small band, and she was great. It was a lot of fun. So I didn't know anyone else actually listened to Angelique Kidjo, but it's cool.
Yeah, like, and I saw the Indigo Girls play duo at Symphony Hall in Cincinnati. It was unbelievable. Like, just how hard they could rock with just like them and their guitars.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking at my
there's
phone. I just listened.
There's an outdoor.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's an outdoor like music venue here in Grand Rapids, like in a gardens area, and we saw Indigo Girls there too. Yeah, they had a band, so there was like two of them and then a full band, and yeah, they rocked. It was great.
It's great. I'm not shy to admit that. And then it looks like of music that's not people with guitars. Leslie Flanagan is somebody who I really love. I was listening to her record. I was on tour with her this week, but I was listening to her record, Hedera, which, if there's any cool kids still listening at this point, you should check her out. And then,
they're the hardcore fans now.
The hardcores. And then I was listening to Nick Fotinos. Nick Fotinos is the cellist of Ace Blackbird, has a solo record that there's some beautiful tunes.
Yeah, cool.
I found myself walking through Holland listening to him the other day.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a record player for a long time, but kind of built a space in my basement. I guess you could call it a man cave if you wanted to.
Nice.
Well, I actually have my drum set up, and actually that's where I am now, sitting like a home office desk, and have a record player now. So I've been collecting albums of like people, Police albums, Peter Gabriel, like stuff that I listened to in junior high school, but then also getting into like Hall & Oates,
Nice.
kind of 70s rock, R&B type stuff. So yeah, I've been enjoying it. So my wife and I do kind of run around, and I guess you could call it antiquing. It's more kind of junking or going to resale or secondhand places or kind of antique places. And if I just sniff out albums and sort through them. So I had a good score the other last weekend. I found not So Percussion, So by
Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel. Yeah, and then I found the Police's Outlandish D'Amour, like their first album, in the same place. So I was super geeked about that. I was like mega score, so I was excited. I'll go do like university tours and stuff, like go travel around mostly Midwest. But I always have a little bit extra time, so I search out record stores or antique places and kind of look for albums. But I've been enjoying it. So.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I didn't think to look for records in antique places.
Yeah, I mean it's becoming more popular. I mean, obviously vinyl's kind of coming back anyways, but so now all these vendors are like, oh, we have vinyl at home, and they start pulling it out. So I don't know. Usually there's a lot of Alabama, a lot of Air Supply, a lot of country western, but you can find some gems. But just a couple other questions, like what if you could go back in time, Doug? Which we're almost there. I can feel it. If you could go back in time, like what would you tell yourself? One or two things, like little tidbits, little gems of information that you could pass along to yourself, or maybe you're passing it along to your students now from your experience.
It's a great question. Well, it's interesting. Well, and contextualizing it into what I do tell my students.
Right.
I think one, I would tell myself, and I do tell my students, just to not take themselves too seriously or not to get too high on themselves. I do think, like in Cincinnati, I must have been insufferable. I think I had a high sense of my value in the world. But just like,
I don't know, I find that hard to believe, but
yeah, no, the realization of, I think I just thought, I don't know what I thought I would be, but I thought I was pretty awesome, I think. And so thanks to my parents for giving me a good self-worth. But just like, but just putting actually being a good citizenship over pushing one's own personal agenda.
Right.
So just to remind myself, like, I think the earlier I could have learned, like, dude, just work hard, but get over yourself. See how you can make the world better for everybody. Would be good. And then I think also, well, it's hard to say actually. The thing I think about a lot now is just how much like nobody in the world can go in a lot of different ways. Like nobody in the world really knows or cares about what any of us do as far as in music. Like we're such a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche in what we do. Even my friends who win, Grammys and do cool stuff, like it's still like, you can, or it's funny, or like thinking about something like PASIC. I was at, my cousin is a stand-up comedian. So one year in Indiana, he was playing. There was a comedy club called Crackers. It's like right next to the convention center. And so when we were hanging out at Crackers, everybody knew him nobody knew who I was. And then we would walk a block from Crackers, and we were both anonymous. And then if we walked into the convention center, people would know who I was and have no idea who he was.
Right.
So we kept just vacillating through like what the scope of influence was and how narrow it was.
Right.
So that just like,
Well, and how the two kind of intersected too. That's pretty interesting.
yeah, but just, like, so if my students can figure out that like, even, or like to use Boston for an example, like no one really knows who I am or Kyle, or nobody knows who Nancy Zeltzman is. Nancy is very important,
Right.
but like outside of our world, Nancy's just like a person and I'm a person. So, just remember, like, I think like but also I think maybe had I had a sense of my own humanity earlier, I wouldn't have worked as hard. So maybe it was motivating and made me who I am, but like, just reminding myself and others, like, let's just get over ourselves and be good people. Cause like we're really lucky to hit things. We're lucky to do what we do, and we should do it well. But at the end of the day, like, it's just as important that I'm like, a good member of my son's junior high parent community, or a good member of my people on my street, or that I'm good to my dog.
Right. Right.
It's all like,
No, I totally agree. And the niche of a niche is something we actually talk about at Black Swamp. I mean, not only are we in the music manufacturing world, but it's percussion manufacturing, and then it's orchestral percussion manufacturing, and it's high-end orchestral percussion manufacturing. So it's definitely niche in a niche. And we always kind of, what I say is, we take what we do seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So I think it's kind of the same vein, where we have this perspective of where we fit into the world, in the music world, but still being good people and still having sense of humor. And exactly like you're saying, like, people outside of our world don't really know who we are, but we try to make a difference in where we are and what in the world we are in. Yeah. And then if I had a dog, I guess I would be nice to it too, but I try to pet
but
my
it's
cat
also
every now and then.
great. It's also what I love about Black Swamp is, like how great that you all get to go to work and do this. You get to make really cool objects for people that care a lot about them, and it like elevates people's musicianship. It's like, it's such a cool, it's so specific, but it also really makes a difference in people's like, for the people who use service, your instruments and things make a difference in their lives in like a very real way.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate that.
And it's like, it's totally ridiculous. That like, it's like, it's this like, I was explaining to somebody the other day, I was like explaining that, well, my woodblock company does this and this, and they're over in Holland, Michigan. And they're like, wait a minute. There's a whole, I was like, yeah, it's a whole thing. And you think, like, and then woodblocks can make your life better, and, give you vacations and healthcare, and can make me sound better, and can make music sound better. And it's like, it's cool. I love that stuff. It's so great. But it's like, we shouldn't get too mad about it. We should get like, I always use those thoughts to go down the gratitude hole of like, so isn't it amazing? It's just amazing. Let's all feel really great about this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I mean, we're, like I said, like, we take what we do seriously, but we try to have a good time and we try to be nice people too. And we just did I say we just did, but it from when people are listening to this, it might be several months old now. We did a question and answer episode for the podcast. And one of the questions was, how all the employees got started and what the favorite part of working at Black Swamp was. And all of us independently, we didn't have a roundtable discussion about it. It was all kind of spontaneous, but everybody said we love working with each other, and we have like an awesome team right now. We're all friends. We're all percussionists for the most part, except for Jamel, who's a bass player. And we're musicians, and we're buds, and we we like hanging out and we like making percussion instruments, and then hopefully, yeah, making your job easier and making percussionists, musicians sound better, and kind of helping to inspire them, and likewise getting inspired by what you guys are doing. I mean, I admit it, I live vicariously like through our artists and educators sometimes, because I, went to school, masters and everything, and was also at a point where I had to kind of decide if I wanted to pursue music, or this opportunity came up and I could still play and be around percussion instruments and work with them and kind of build a career in that. So I've been totally like blessed and gracious for that also. But enough about me. I appreciate the conversation, Doug. Like, it's been awesome. Like, I've known you for a long time. You were like one of our first like big supporters, and I've learned like so much about you, like, that I didn't know before. So I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you calling in,
thanks.
taking time between globe trotting, and good luck, everything you got going on, and I'm just happy to know you and get to work with you. So thank you.
All right, thanks, man. I'll see you soon.
Pizzazz!